Pleased to welcome our next speaker, Craig Ostbo. He's the co-founder and co-president of Koopman Ostbo Marketing Communications. You may have heard that name before. He does strategic direction for dozens of social entrepreneurs who are doing good and making money. And those include, but are not limited to, Bob's Red Mill, Kettle Foods, R.W. Knutson, Nature's Path, Pacific Foods, BioClean, and Castor and Pollock's Pet Works. That's the only one I hadn't really heard of, but maybe more to come on that, just to name a few. And you can go online and see much more details about this. I'm sure that you have heard about this new breed of business owner called social entrepreneurs. We've talked a little bit about that today already. People who prove that it is possible to make money and make the world a better place. Now, the label social entrepreneur might be new, but the concept certainly isn't. And Craig Ostbo has worked with such entrepreneurs over the past 2 decades, and he'll talk about why the lessons learned from them are so critical in today's economy. Please help me welcome Craig Ostbo for his talk, Do Good and Make Money.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Excellent. Good, good. I have to watch this stairwell. I'm kind of a walker, and so earlier I was going, can I do this? Can I make this here? Somebody scream if I'm going this way, because this could be a problem for me, because I don't know if it's ADD or what. I can't really stand still while I speak. And also, I have to do a little bit of housekeeping here. This is a prop. We're in a theater. It's a prop because I need something in my hand, and the clicker doesn't work. But my lovely assistant, Keith, back here, and I'd love for you all to give him some applause. If the slides work, it's because of Keith, who is running my slides for me. So I do not have a nervous twitch when I do this. It means, go, Keith. And so let's go, Keith. A business that makes nothing but money is a poor business. Who said that? You. Well, I did. I just said that. This is a smart audience. This is going to be a little bit of a problem today. Who else? I know there's one person in here who knows that, and she'll say it in a German accent. Where is she? Ford. Henry Ford, that's right. Henry Ford. A long time ago, Henry Ford said, a business that makes nothing but money is a poor business. And what he was really emphasizing was makes, that word. He didn't say, you'll notice, a business that makes money is a poor business, because after all, we need to make money to do payroll and taxes, etc. And nothing I share with you today is about anything but capitalism. I'm a capitalist. I like capitalism. I think capitalism is good. Greed, on the other hand, is really kind of bad. But capitalism is good. And also making money is good. Because when you make money, you get to hire people. And you get to pay taxes. And you get to do all those wonderful things. And I know Henry wasn't against making money. But what he was really focused on was on what you make, on what you do. What is it that you do? At Koopman Ostbo, we've been very, very fortunate over the last couple of decades to work with a tremendous amount of entrepreneurs who are really, really focused first and foremost on what they do, on what they make. They also like making money. Make no mistake, they're all capitalists. They like making money. But they're very, very focused on what they do. And they're also focused on something else. Because not one of those companies or any of the others that we've worked with in our entire history, not one of them didn't say this: I want to change the world. I want to change dairy. I want to change whole grains. I want to change potato chips. I want to offer a better product. They want to change the world. They want to do good while they make money. And today we're really fortunate because there's a term for them, because for the longest time, we just called them hippies. Because, well, there wasn't a term. We didn't know what to call them. And it's probably true. Many of these brands probably did come out of that counterculture 1960 environment. And many of the brands that you saw up there indeed did. But today, we refer to them instead as social entrepreneurs. And yes, Ben and Jerry could be considered that also. Social entrepreneurs. And what I find really interesting about their story is the social emphasis here on entrepreneurism was not the business philosophy of the day when they started these brands. Quite the contrary. The business philosophy had nothing to do with being social while you were making money. And it interested us so much that my business partner, Ken Koopman, and I are actually writing a book on this called, appropriately enough, Do Good and Make Money. But it's a study of these entrepreneurs and the people who really support them and their products. And we find it just so interesting why they want to do good first, where that really comes from. And as I mentioned, because it's not the business philosophy necessarily that they grew up in. Take a trip with me, if you will, to Chicago. This is the University of Chicago. And let's pretend it's the 1980s. And I want to introduce you to someone. Dr. Milton Friedman. Anyone familiar with Milton Friedman? Yeah, a lot of you very, very familiar. I'm using Dr. Friedman to really kind of set the stage for the business philosophy of the day when many of these businesses started, because this is a brilliant, brilliant Nobel-winning economist who was at the University of Chicago. He was also an advisor to President Reagan and many other statesmen. Brilliant man. But what he said, I think you'll find interesting as you compare it to do good and make money. There is one and only one social responsibility of business: to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase profits. That was kind of the philosophy of the day. In fact, he went on to say, if you were a publicly traded company, not an entrepreneur, the sole business of the managers of a publicly held corporation was to maximize the value of its outstanding shares. Any effort to use corporate resources for purely altruistic purposes, he equated to socialism. Now, when a lot of these brands that you saw earlier associated with Koopman Ostbo started, that was the business philosophy of the day. And that's what I find so interesting about how they kind of went upriver, if you will, or against the tide. And this wasn't just at the University of Chicago. This was at Wharton, or this was on the West Coast at Stanford, or this was over on the East Coast at Harvard, even. In fact, it was everywhere. I even had a textbook, I still have. It's Fundamentals of Corporate Finance. In the very first sentence of the very first chapter, it says, the job of a financial manager is to increase shareholder value. I would say, what's your definition of value? Then maybe we can talk about that. And that's where these entrepreneurs are really coming from. But let's pretend we're today at Harvard, and I want to introduce you to another professor. His name is Michael Porter. He's a brilliant business professor, marketing professor. And if we were in his class right now, he'd be asking us, is business good for society? Well, yeah, it creates jobs, it pays its taxes, it brings money into the local economy. Of course business is good for society. But this is a two-part question. Let's flip it over on the other side. Is society good for business? What do you think? Is society good for business? And he'd go on to explain, if you were to look first and foremost in today's economy at societal needs and solve those needs with your business, you'll find far more economic opportunity than if you look first to business. There are so many economic opportunities if you look to society and its needs and solve them like many of those entrepreneurs. And I happen to really agree with Michael Porter, and so do quite a few other social entrepreneurs that we've interviewed. And I'm going to share a few of those with you, and in the interest of transparency, only one of them is a client. I wanted to share people that were, I felt, really something that this audience would be interested in. So let's leave Harvard, and let's go about 400 miles to Baltimore. And I want you to meet Dimitri. Dimitri wants to have the most organic hotel in America. The most organic hotel in America. And think about what this might take. Well, you don't have to think about it. I'll show you what it'll take. So Dimitri, at the Black Olive Inn in Baltimore, in downtown Baltimore, has 12 suites. They're all 800 to 1,000 feet, which is very different than your average hotel, which is usually about 250, 350. Those of you in the hotel business here, and there are several of you, you know that to be true. He wants you to have some space and some room. He also wants his rooms chemically free. And if you can see here better, you see there's no carpeting here. There are some, what do you call it, like oriental carpets, whatever, that are guaranteed chemical free. But the floors are concrete, and it releases no VOCs. They've taken care of all that. In fact, to go even a step further, what looks like paint, that's not paint. That's a special lime plaster that then is coated in olive oil soap to create the color. And it creates a perfect moisture barrier. It also creates the inability for any mold to happen anywhere. So he's really serious about chemical free. All of his bedding is organic, all the sheets, the towels, etc. Every room has an aquatherapy tub, which, by the way, the water is filtered coming in there and filtered coming into the shower. All of the bath products are organic. And when it comes to heating and cooling, it's all geothermal. So he says 70% on his energy cost to do that. And we're in the kitchen right now. When it comes to the kitchen, everything's organic. The entire menu is organic and locally sourced whenever he can do it. Even his wines are organic, and if not organic, biodynamic. And if you take a trip up his elevator to the rooftop restaurant, you're riding in an elevator that doesn't have hydraulic fluid. He's found another way to run that elevator because that's a chemical and that's a problem, and he wants a chemical-free hotel. And when you ask Dimitri why he does this, I love this answer because we talk about doing good, and look what he says here. There's so much liability in doing anything else. It's not just doing good. He's gone beyond doing good. He's thinking liability. In fact, anecdotally, I hear that if you're on that rooftop restaurant and the fireworks go off, somehow his fireworks are organic. I don't know how he pulls that off, but that's just anecdotal. I believe that to be true. So let's come back to Portland, a little more familiar territory, and meet Christopher Lofgren. Anyone here know Christopher Lofgren and the restaurant that he owns? Christopher owns Bamboo Sushi, a wonderful, wonderful sushi restaurant, by the way. And I love, being in branding and marketing, I love his positioning line. Sustainable, delectable, possible. It just leaves you asking that question, what's possible? I want to know. He has a couple of great restaurants here, too, one in Northeast and one in Northwest. And while his menu is phenomenal, and I promise you, go there, you will thank me for this, and it's affordable, it's where he sources his fish and his seafood that's so interesting, because he guarantees that everything you're eating, everything, is from a sustainable fishery. At Bamboo Sushi, they believe that the best way to create change, there's that change word again, I said earlier, they want to change the world. The best way to create change is through partnerships. And they have partnered with just about everybody who's anybody in sustainable seafood. In fact, one of my favorites is the Marine Stewardship Council. How many are familiar with the Marine Stewardship Council? You know when you see this logo on any restaurant, or if you see it on a package of any seafood, you're guaranteed that that seafood is from a sustainable fishery. And here's the odd thing about sustainable fisheries. The more of it we eat, the more we replenish the ocean. The more of it we eat, the more we replenish. Usually it's the more you eat, the more you use. Here it's the more we eat, the more we encourage more sustainable fisheries. So eat up your sustainable seafood. We first were introduced to MSC in 2006. We got the incredible opportunity to launch the first ever sustainable pink shrimpery, and that happened to be Oregon Trawl. Our own Oregon fishermen had changed their netting, changed their performance, and lived up to MSC certification, which also helped them get a better price for their shrimp. Now also, we have Oregon Dungeness is MSC certified. So I happened to be in Germany in July, and I had the wonderful opportunity to work with the German headquarters of MSC. And here's your German lesson for today. Now, Michelle, don't comment on how I'm going to say this, because she's German. Nachhaltig. I can't say that in German. Basically, that's sustainable. If you want to know what sustainable is in German, there it is, the middle word there. That means sustainability in German. And this was part of a great program that we got to create for them. In November, every college and university cafeteria in every government ministry and many, many restaurants throughout Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, all German-speaking countries, we're going to have posters and postcards and keychains, and you name it, all to encourage eating sustainable seafood. And what I really loved about this program, and I can't tell you what that headline is, Michelle could, but I can't. But I'll tell you that the concept for the whole campaign was make sure the catch of today is also the catch of tomorrow. And every one of those sayings or headlines says something to that effect. And I can promise you, if you eat at Bamboo Sushi, what you eat today, you'll be able to eat tomorrow. Christopher is making sure of that. So let's stay here in Portland. And anybody know who this guy is? Bob. Yeah. Pretty much all you got to say anymore is Bob. Yeah, it's Bob. For those of you who don't know, and for our good friends from Sweden, which, by the way, we are in Sweden, Bob's products are in 71 countries worldwide, so I don't know if you've seen them. But for those of you that don't know, Bob makes over 400 products, whole grain, many stone ground, and many, as you heard Allison talk earlier, many gluten-free. For those of you who are both diagnosed celiac and those of you who just feel, or think you feel better, eating gluten-free. That's a whole nother subject that we're not going to go into. But Bob's a phenomenal guy, and he's been doing this for so long with his wife, Charlie, and he has an incredible concept of how he does good. And I'm going to let you in on the secret. And we've been with him 16 years, and I've never shared this secret before, so you got to promise you won't let this leave the room. Because this is not a $1 million business. This is a multi-million-dollar business, and I'm about to give you the whole secret for his brand. Are you ready? Don't share this. You see that mill up there? If I had a little laser pointer I'd point to, that's a mill. In the top of that mill goes 100 pounds of grain. And what comes out that hole right there and into that bag is 100 pounds of ground grain. You get that? That's the whole secret. 100 pounds in, 100 pounds out. It's amazing. It's so simple. And why is that so important? Because it's more than the endosperm, which you're getting with your white flour. You're getting the germ and you're getting the brand. And Bob knows if you get the germ and you get the brand, you get the protein and you get the fiber and you get the nutrients and you get the minerals and you get the omega-3s and you get the omega-6s. That's what makes his product so killer. That's why you should eat it. That's the secret to his success. That's what built his brand. 100 pounds in, 100 pounds out. But Bob's even a little more phenomenal than that. Some of you may remember this. On his 81st birthday, he gave his company to his employees through an employee stock ownership plan, what's called an ESOP. That's where their 401k ends up buying all of Bob's stock. Diane Sawyer looks like she's crying here, and she really was. She was right next to tears. She actually called this the feel-good story of the recession. Many people who wrote into her blog that night said, "You've restored my faith in American business," because Bob felt that the only thing he could do is give it to his employees. But that wasn't enough. Then when he got some of the money from the employees, he and his wife Charlie, the sainted Charlie, then went on to give $25 million to OHSU as they start to rid themselves of their wealth gained from this ESOP. And the purpose at OHSU, they have groundbreaking research that helps a mother understand that the most important time in her baby's life is the first 1,000 days. And in that time, what she eats and what that baby eats is critical to the health life of that child the rest of its life. That's where Bob's putting his money. But he didn't stop there. Then he went on, as a social entrepreneur, and he gave $5 million to OSU for a program to help end childhood obesity. And he went on further, and he gave $1.2 million, he and Charlie, to the National College of Natural Medicine, to also for their ECHO program, which stands for End Childhood Obesity. This is a guy who walks the talk. He's an amazing man with an amazing story, he and Charlie both. And this is his biography, which happened to be written by my business partner, Ken Koopman. And Ken and I were so thrilled about this event and all of you coming today that we decided that until the books ran out, Ken will be in the lobby during the Cascadian reception, and he'll be signing them, and they're free. They're our gift to you. We would love for you to read this inspirational story of this incredible man and his wife. And it will really encourage you entrepreneurs, because there's a lot of failure in there. For any of you that remember, at 60 years old, the whole thing burned to the ground. When he was 60, he had nothing. And he's rebuilt what he has today from there. So it's a great story. Ken's a fabulous writer. I can't wait for you to read it. Make sure you get one before they run out. So that's just a small glance at the over thousands of social entrepreneurs I could have introduced you to. But I wanted you to meet a few of them, hopefully relevant to you, because these are people who are truly trying to do good and make money. But there's something else going on. Let's go back to Harvard. And back to Michael Porter, who asked that question, is business good for society, or is society good for business? And you might ask, well, why is that just going on at Harvard? Aha, it's not. This question of social entrepreneurism and social enterprise is happening at many, many colleges across the country. You see just a small sampling of what we've identified so far as about 65 schools, including Milton Friedman's alma mater. The University of Chicago has a stellar social entrepreneurism and social enterprise program, and I can hear Milton Friedman rolling over in his grave at the thought that we're actually going to think socially first on how to do good. But there are many, many, many universities offering this program, including our own Linfield, who we have some students here from today. Let's hear it, Wildcats. Yeah, all right, they're here. So, all right, yeah. And their social entrepreneurism program led by Dr. Michelle Nelson, my good friend who knows I just butchered German like mad. And let me tell you why this is happening. You're looking at it. This was not a group of business professors who got together and decided that, okay, the philosophy du jour is going to be social entrepreneurism. It's the students. The students are driving this. The students want to do good while they're making money. And they want to know that while there's absolutely nothing wrong with starting a nonprofit, God bless you for doing it, you don't have to start a nonprofit to do good. You can do good in a for-profit company, and these students know it. And they're passionate, and they're driving these programs. And that's what every one of these professors is telling us. It's being driven by the students. But I don't want you to look at them as just students. I want you to look at them as your future employees. Because that's what they are. And that's what they're looking for. They want to know, are you doing good? In fact, at Koopman Ostbo right now, we have 3 open positions, and we've been interviewing like mad, and I've been in most every one of the interviews. And I swear this is true. I'm not making it up. It wasn't just for this speech. Every one of them, when I ask what they want to do, they say they want to do good. I finally couldn't take it anymore. I started saying, well, why? Julie. I said, Julie. I'll call her Julie. That's not her name. Julie, why do you want to do good? I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but help me understand. She goes, you really want to know? I said, yeah, I really want to know. Okay, it's selfish. I go, it's selfish? She goes, yeah. It feels good. At the end of the day, it just feels good. I want to know when I go to work, what I do feels good, and it does something for someone. And yeah, I'd like to make a lot of money doing it. It's a really good thing. It feels good. So if you're like Julie, or Bob, or Christopher, or Dimitri, or David, who was here earlier in Oregon Chai, or Cameron Healy from Kettle Chips, or Dave and Glenn and Shobi Dahl from Dave's Killer Bread. If you're like any of those and you want to change the world, let me just leave you with one more quote from Henry Ford. Whether you think you can or that you can't, you are usually right. So my suggestion to you is think that you can. Get out there, do good, and make a lot of money doing it. Thank you.
That was amazing.
Thank you.
Timed almost to the second.
I told you I had it down. It was up to my lovely assistant, Keith. Thank you for getting me through
nice
that.
round of applause for Keith. All right, thanks. Who wants to start us off with the first question? I will say, while we're waiting for the person to raise their hand for the first question, I so enjoyed, we had Bob Moore on Think Out Loud, and it was one of the most popular audience shows. People absolutely just fell out of their seats, just saying how much they loved his story, and they loved that, the inspiration that, oh wow, there can really be something good in business. Just kind of exploding that stereotype that they have to be mutually exclusive. Anyway, that's enough from me.
Yeah, let me give you just a little secret. When you meet Bob, don't call him a social entrepreneur. He doesn't know that he is. He thinks you're calling him a communist. Don't call him a social entrepreneur, but just know that he is the epitome of a social entrepreneur.
Great, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm from Linfield. So when in your career did you decide that this was going to be like your mantra? Like, because I know 30, 40 years ago, this wasn't nearly as big a movement as it has been recently. When do you think that shift happened?
Well, I can tell you when that shift happened for us. That's a great question, Emily, and that's a great name. That's my daughter's name. I love that name. For us, we weren't smart enough to see this coming. Ken and I will tell you we were not smart enough. So we happened to pay a favor forward, and a friend was so pleased she introduced us to a guy named Cameron Healy, who at the time was Nerbo Khalsa, and he owned Kettle Chips. And on her advice, he became our first client in consumer packaged goods. And he said, you need to see what the Natural Products Show is all about. So you're coming to Anaheim, 1995, and you're going to learn what natural products are all about. And Ken and I had bets on how many hippies would be smoking pot in the booth, not behind the booth. I mean, right there in the middle of the show. And we walked into this show, and we were blown away with what we saw. This is one of only 2 shows that fills the entire Anaheim Convention Center year after year. It's amazing how it's grown and what we saw. And the Northwest companies we were introduced to, like Bob's and Nature's Path and Pacific Foods and Stretch Island Fruit Leather and Cascadian Farms, and it just went on. And they were right here in our backyard, and we didn't know it until we went to that event. And we always like to say we weren't smart enough to see it coming, but when this consumer trend, by far the greatest consumer trend in my lifetime, hit us over the head like a sledgehammer, we were smart enough to know where we were. That's when it changed for us, 1995.
Okay, the person with the most passionate question, we have room for one more, so really passionate. All right, passionate. And why are all the passionate people in the middle?
Somebody spoke earlier about being bought by large corporations and how that doesn't necessarily, or we shouldn't think badly of the product because they were sold. As far as what you're talking about, does that change their, the smaller companies now being bought by the large corporations here, change their socialistic tendencies?
Did everybody hear the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm really glad you asked that. I'm sorry, what was your name?
Michelle.
Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. That was a great question. And I love answering that one because we have taken the time to hang out with a lot of private equity and venture capitalists. We've sponsored events for them at the Natural Products Show because there are so many of them there. In fact, I can tell you at any point in time in that room of the sponsorship, there's over 150 venture capitalists and private equity firms at the Natural Products Show looking for brands to take them forward. They know that a lot of these brands do need money to take the next step. Some of the brands, I mean, it's really difficult in America today to try and build a brand, to expand your distribution, to build up all the inventory like a Dave's Killer Bread is going to need to do on the back of just the profits that are coming in. You need a way to find capital. And many times in today's banking environment, and I won't slam banks because I sit on the board of directors of a bank, but it's difficult to loan, and private equity provides that gap. I would say to the question of, do they find themselves a change of values, if you will? No, I think you heard it this morning from David Howitt, and I thought he summed it up best for Dave's Killer Bread. Who they give money to is staying the same. Who controls the brand is staying the same, etc. And I guess I would ask about Kettle Chips. I was certainly there many times when Cameron said, I'll never sell the brand, but eventually probably $400 million changed his mind. And he is now a great philanthropist, so he can do what he wants to do. But I swear Kettle Chips are the same great potato chips that you loved 10 years ago and you'll love today. No, I don't think it has to change. It doesn't need to change. And I really appreciated David saying, it's really amazing for someone to realize they've reached the entrepreneurial ceiling. They've gone as far as they feel they can take it without even more professional help. And so I appreciate it when they reach out, as long as they keep their values. Because you, the customer, you really are the one that drives the decision. You're the one. In fact, guys, I got to tell you, it's not even you, it's women. Women drive 85% of the purchase decisions in America, and the other 15%, they just let you think you did. They are in control, and I got to tell you, you don't fool a woman. So if someone is sold, they know that if they don't keep their values, what are you going to do? You're going to stop buying them. Uh-oh. Now you're in trouble, especially when you tweet about it. Now you're in real trouble. So I would say no. Your values don't have to change. Many of the companies we've been associated with did not change. And the private equity firms and those that invested in it knew what they were buying and knew what they were investing in, knew what they wanted, and they wanted those values.
Craig Ostbo, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.